And welcome in, folks, to another edition of Open Mic Night. I am your host, Noah Taluki, and on today's episode, the Lions winning it 34-30 over the Chicago Bears, moving their record to 5-7. We'll break that one down for you. Also, I love the win, but there is one thing I'm worried about with the current situation of management. We'll break that down as well. Also, one general manager in the news that the Lions are interested in. I will give you my advice and kind of break that down for you as well. Finally, we're going to have a great guest later on in the program. It is Rob Rubick, who used to do Lions preseason football. He's doing Eastern Michigan football now, former Lions player as well. That should be a fun conversation. Really, really looking forward to that one as well. Hopefully everybody had a great weekend. It's just getting colder outside, but we're getting closer to Christmas, the holiday season, the new year going to be ringing up upon us pretty soon. Well, let's do it. Lions winning that one 34-30, and man, was that a great game. I mean, the Lions seemed to be out of it for a lot of the part of the game. I mean, the defense was not stepping up when necessary. Mitchell Trubisky was having his way on a couple drives with the Lions. The Lions defense was allowing all those rushing touchdowns. First times in about 30 years that the Bears had those three rushing touchdowns in the first half. So not a good start, but I will give the Lions this. The defense later on stepped up when they needed to. They need a big stop on third down, 3rd and 4. Backed up near the Bears' end zone. What happens? They get a big stop. Romeo Okwara comes off the right edge, strip sacks Mitchell Trubisky, and it was recovered by John Pennicini, and a couple plays later, the Lions punch it in with Adrian Peterson. And then a big 4th down stop when they needed it most to kill any sort of hope that the Bears would win that game. Lions snuffed that one out. Big Kevin Strong, one of the backup defensive linemen, with the stop up the middle. And I just got to say this, folks, and I've told you this before, a win is a win. I don't want to hear about draft slots and, well, we need to lose, this does us nothing. No. Enough with the hate. Enough with it. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of the hate with this team. This team already gets enough hate. When they win a game, people have to hate more? I just never understood that with this team. I never understood how after a win, people complain. I mean, I could totally see it after a loss. And I know fans get crazy after losses and they start going on Twitter and, Facebook and all that stuff, ranting about the team. I get it. But after a win, come on. You play to win the game. You play to win the game. You got to think of this from the players and the coaches' perspective. They're not out there thinking about tanking. Nobody out there is thinking about tanking and, we got to get a better draft spot. No, these guys want to win for Darrell Bevell. The broadcast kept talking about it, how happy the Lions were on the sidelines. And, I will admit, if when you win a game, of course you're going to be happy, but I will admit, you did see the energy a little bit on the sidelines. So I think it just proves that the players were not as receptive to Patricia as they are to Bevell. I mean, Bevell seems, especially from the press conferences that I saw, and, I watched a lot of them last week just to get a feel of who Darrell Bevell was, really. I could just sense that he has a way more positive attitude. He wants guys to come in with positivity and freshness. And I really like that about him because, especially from ex-players' accounts, we've seen it very public that Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn, they kind of run a little bit of a dictatorship over there in Allen Park. We're the alpha dogs. If you don't do it our way, then see you. If you don't agree with us, then you're getting traded. Slay, Diggs. But you know what? It seemed like Darrell Bevell wanted to instill in the guys that, hey, you can still have fun playing football. And you know what? They won that game, and they never quit in that game. And I was really, really happy with that. But that's going to lead to my next point. And I told you, there's one thing I'm worried about this whole thing. And it comes with management, Sheila Ford and Rod Wood, who apparently now is having all kinds of say in what's going to happen with the general manager and the head coach and all that moving forward. I'm worried that the success that the Lions have under Bevell will just be more enticing to the Ford family, Rod Wood, to hire him as a head coach. And look, I like Bevell. I think he's a very genuine person. I think he fits really well with the players. I think Stafford really likes him. I don't have a problem with any of that. But here's the thing. I don't want him as the head coach. I don't. I think almost everybody from the Matt Patricia era should just be gone. And I get it. I get how in the NFL it's important to have chemistry with your players and all that, but no, it's time for a fresh start. And that's the other thing, too, because as much as Stafford might like Bevell, the decision for a head coach shouldn't depend on what Matthew Stafford wants. I don't think at this point in Stafford's career he should have a say in these decisions because you never know. Next season, he could be gone. With the new management, they might want a new quarterback in, maybe trying to draft somebody this year, next year maybe. But that's how I see it. If they're making the decision because Stafford wants him back or something like that, no. And that's what I'm worried about. I do not want Darrell Bevell or Corey Unlin back. I want the Lions to finish strong, obviously, because I want people to know that this is how bad it was in Detroit with Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn. The Lions can prove that they could still win some games even without Patricia, and they have better talent than a lot of people realize. It's going to be tough, though, because Green Bay, I don't know. I don't know about that game. And then they have Tampa, Titans, Vikings. I mean, those are 4 tough games. I'm not expecting the Lions to go out and win all 4. I'm not expecting the playoffs here, okay? I'm not one of those people that thinks, oh, well, they're going to make the playoffs and, I know there's a mathematical percent, but no. Just time to clean house, get ready for the offseason, and let's get the show on the road. But that doesn't mean that the Lions could still not try to compete and lay down. And I know the defense, they seem like the same old defense, the SOD, same old defense, I guess. But they clawed back into it. By the way, did anybody notice Darrell Bevell's story of how he learned how he was named interim head coach? I caught this at his press conference last week when, they kind of were announcing him as the interim head coach. He said he was at Greenfield Village with his family. They were in the glass blowing shop, and he had to step out when he received a text to call Rod Wood as soon as possible. And so that was when he found out that he was named interim head coach. It just struck a chord with me a little bit because, I worked at Greenfield Village for 3 years, and I know that place like the back of my hand. So I just thought that was really cool. And it just plays into more of the fact that I think Bevell's just a genuine person. He seemed really excited to be there, and I know he's been wanting to be a head coach for a long time. He coached Brett Favre as quarterbacks coach for the Packers and, worked as offensive coordinator for the Vikings for 5 seasons, I believe. Obviously winning the Super Bowl with Seattle. I'm happy for Bev. And he's more of a player's coach and very genuine person, and I like that about him. But as the next Lions head coach, I really, really hope that the Lions don't pull the trigger on that because everybody needs to go. They need to completely start fresh. The Lions could win the next 4 games, and I still would not want Darrell Bevell back. I just think it's a complete rebuild at this point. All right, final point I wanted to make before Rob Rubick joins us. One former NFL general manager has been in the news that the Lions are interested in him, and that is former Chiefs and Browns general manager John Dorsey. He was a scout with the Green Bay Packers for a number of years. Actually, was on the staff for both of their Super Bowl wins, so the one in the 90s and then one in 2011 for Super Bowl 45. Then he was the Chiefs general manager from 2013 to 2016. Then the Browns general manager from 2017 to 2019 as well. That's what I got to say about this, John Dorsey. I think it's very obvious that he has an eye for talent. And, especially with the draft picks that he made in Cleveland. A lot of the key playmakers on the Browns this season, and they're doing really well. This will be their first winning season since 2007. A lot of those key playmakers were guys that John Dorsey drafted. So I think it's obvious that he has an eye for talent, but The problem is that he's stubborn. He wants his guys in there. And I think that was evident when he was in Cleveland. I think he was fired for those reasons. He hired Freddie Kitchens as head coach, and that was a complete disaster for the Browns. Again, Freddie Kitchens being one of his guys, it just didn't work out. And he's done that with some players as well that he's drafted, like Antonio Callaway, among others. But the main thing is that he has an eye for talent. And the other rumor that's kind of swirling around is if John Dorsey gets rehired as a general manager somewhere in the NFL, he may team up with Eric Bieniemy and take him as head coach to wherever team he ends up. So I think that's interesting as well, because a lot of people out there want Eric Bieniemy as Lions head coach. I definitely think it needs to be an offensive coach. I'm not saying it has to be Bieniemy, but I don't think it would necessarily hurt a lot. I mean, we could get into the whole discussion of if he's overrated and all that, and I don't really want to get much into names. The only reason I mentioned Dorsey is because it's been in the news lately. We'll cross that bridge when we get there about a head coach. Once we name a general manager, then I'll start to consider head coaching names. But a lot of people want to focus on those coaches, but first you got to name the general manager, and then they're the ones that usually bring in the coach. Bob Quinn was hired on January 8th of 2016, so I'm assuming that the Lions are going to make their final decision around then, so we're probably going to have another month or so. But this has been the Lions' problem for a long time, is that they've had poor talent evaluators. I mean, you look at guys like Ty Johnson, who just ran for over 100 yards for the Jets. I mean, he was cut a couple months ago by the Lions, and all of a sudden he's running for over 100 yards. You know how difficult it is for Lions running backs to run for over 100 yards in the last 7 or 8 seasons? Very difficult. And a guy that the Lions cut basically told him he wasn't good enough to play for us. All of a sudden, goes to the Jets, runs for over 100 yards against the Raiders. You saw that with Travis Fulgham earlier this year as well. He was one of the main weapons for Carson Wentz for that stretch of time. He was getting over 100 receiving yards and catching touchdowns. Another player that the Lions said, not good enough to play for us. It's a recurring theme. Guys that don't make it on the Lions will make it with other teams. So there's obviously a disconnect between, the personnel that they're drafting and talent evaluation, taking guys too high like Jelani Tavai in the second round who've just been very average to below average players. So I definitely think this general manager, their number one thing, they have to know how to evaluate talent, because that is something that the Lions have lacked for a long time. And once they get somebody that understands that talent, I think that will pay dividends to the Lions in the future.
And joining us now here on Open Mic Night is Rob Rubick. He was a tight end for your Detroit Lions from 1982 to 1988, and he also broadcasts Lions preseason football, Eastern Michigan football, and high school football on Fox Sports Detroit. Rob, thank you so much for joining us.
No, it's my pleasure.
I think it's very unique in your situation because you actually started playing football and you grew up in the Upper Peninsula, a native of Newberry, Michigan. How did you start getting into football at an early age, and what was it like growing up in the UP with a great football tradition it is up there?
It's nice to see that you've done your research, Noel. I appreciate that. I came from a small town called Newberry in the Upper Peninsula, and I was a very average high school football player. I was a 17-year-old senior. I matured physically quite late, so I ended up walking on at Grand Valley. I had a visit to Northern, visit to Saginaw, and a visit to Grand Valley. And the coach at Northern, when he was talking to me at the end, he had my correct first name. So I said, I will not play there. My dad said, you'll never play for him. Saginaw Valley, I went there. They said they're going to offer me. Then when we left, the guy said, well, we can get you financial aid. And my father was not happy with that. He said, the guy lied to us. I went to Grand Valley, and Jim Harkin was the head coach there. And he said, well, Mr. Rubick, your son is kind of small. Doesn't look like he's very fast or very strong, but he looks athletic, and he can walk on here, and we can give you some financial aid, which you can get anywhere, but we think that he could develop. And my dad said he liked him. He said he was a straight shooter, and he was honest. And I ended up walking on at Grand Valley. I had work study back then for some of my financial aid I was getting, so he got me a job in the weight room, supervising the weight room. So I lifted a lot and went from 180 pounds as a freshman to 6'2", 180-pound tight end, which now is a small wide receiver. And when I graduated in 4 years, I was 230. So I put on 50 pounds because I was a young kid. I never had a weight in my hand. And I developed my body, and tremendous coach. Jim Harkema, to this day, at any level, is the best coach I ever played for. And he helped me tremendously. And what I learned, which a lot of guys didn't know, when I got to the NFL, I understood concepts. I didn't just know on a particular route that I ran a 15-yard route. I knew why I was running. Maybe learn coverages, maybe learn how quarterbacks read progression, read down the field, how you flood zones. So I had a great understanding mentally when I got to the NFL compared to other guys I was competing with. And once I got drafted, I was supposed to have been about a 5th-round pick, but I blew my knee against Ferris State in my last game as a senior. And all the scouts that were coming by during the year stopped coming by once I blew my knee. The only team that came and worked me out were the Lions, and they worked me out a week before the draft. It was the first time I'd sprinted since I had knee surgery. Coach named Larry Seipel worked me out. My quarterback, he also worked out together with me. We ended up getting drafted in the 11th round by the Browns, and I went in the 12th round. So really, people are kind of giving up on me when you're being recruited or looked at being drafted and you're a Division II guy. That's one strike against you because your level of competition, isn't what some people play. I was undersized a little bit, and I was coming off knee surgery. So you put those three things together, even though during the season I was projected as a 5th round, I pretty much disappeared off the draft board. And the Lions actually would not have drafted me, but the second day of the draft, Seattle Seahawks had called me, and they sent a guy over and wanted to sign me as a free agent. And I told the Lions that, and they said, don't do anything. And then they called me back about a half hour later and said, we just drafted you with our 2nd pick in the 12th round, which they used to have. Now they only have 7. So I was drafted by the Lions. They liked me enough where they were going to sign me as a free agent, but the thought that I might go to Seattle, they drafted me with their 2nd pick in the 12th round, which is kind of on a whim. So that's pretty much how I got to Detroit, and that's my novel, and there's a lot more to it, but you have to wait for the book to come out.
You were, of course, you mentioned Grand Valley. You are in the school's athletic Hall of Fame as well. Just talk about, you said Division II, and you already have a strike against you when you're coming out of that small school. But Grand Valley, they seem to just consistently win, and they consistently put guys in the NFL. They have their own indoor facility, which is almost unheard of for a Division II school. So how does Grand Valley do it year in and year out?
It was quite a bit different. Now, when I got drafted, I was only the 2nd player ever from Grand Valley. Ron Essink, a tackle who was 2 years ahead of me, got drafted by the Seahawks. Ended up having a nice career. Started 6 of the 7 years. And I was the 2nd guy that got drafted. And then after me, next year, Jeff Chadwick came from Dearborn Divine Child in Grand Valley. He was signed as a free agent by the Lions. He played 10 years in the NFL. We were really kind of the pioneers for Grand Valley. And then there was a little bit of a lag through the early to mid-'80s. But then by the time they got to the 90s, and you had Eric Lynch, who was a running back with the Lions, played 3 or 4 years from he was from Woodhaven, downriver. You had David Kirkus from Imlay City, also from Grand Valley. Then the floodgates really opened up, and probably the 2 best pros that have ever come out of Grand Valley. One would be Brandon Carr, I think played 12 years or 13 years as a defensive back, which is unheard of. I'd say the next one's Matt Judon, who's playing now for the Ravens. He's a sophomore. But we've probably had, 12 to 14 guys that have gotten vested, which means you played 4 years or more in the league. So they have had a pipeline. Now, Ferris has kind of picked that up lately. Tony Nese has done a nice job, and he's pumped a lot of players in the league as well. But the GLIAC in general, Division II in general, if you look through the rosters in the NFL, kids that come from Division II, even NAIA or FCS schools, it's about 15 to 20% of every team's roster. There's players out there. Well, for one reason or another, like myself, I was young, I was undersized, I was just starting, I was a late bloomer, and I went to Grand Valley. Different kids go for different reasons to smaller schools, but the bottom line, if you can play, they will find you, especially now.
I want to go back to your Lions career first. You mentioned you were drafted in the 12th round in 1982. What exactly was your reaction like when you heard that you were drafted by your home state team, the Lions?
Well, yeah, here's the deal. As I kind of alluded to earlier. It's the 2nd day of the draft. The draft ends at 4 o'clock, and it was about 2 in the afternoon. I didn't think I'd get drafted. So a bunch of my buddies and I, we went down playing at an elementary school and playing some dunk ball on a 9-foot hoop. And I had told my girlfriend at the time, I said, hey, if anyone calls me to sign me as a free agent, I'm at the school. I'm at the elementary school. So we're out there. It's about 3 o'clock. A little kid comes running out. He said, hey, is there a Rob Rubick here? I said, Rubick. There's a phone call, and I go into the school. That's my girlfriend. She said, there's a guy from the Seahawks coming. So when I get there, the guy from Seattle's there. He said, well, the draft's over, Rob, and we want to sign you as a free agent. I said, great. Let me call my coach. So I called my head coach, and he said, why don't you wait just a few minutes? Some other teams might call you, and then you can kind of compare which rosters you have a better chance of making. And that's when the Lions called, and he said, don't do anything. So then the Lions called me back, and they said, we just drafted you in the 12th round. And I told the guy from Seattle, sitting in my apartment, I said, you told me the draft was over. He goes, no, I didn't say that. He did. He lied. When I said the Lions drafted me, you could hear above the apartment, all these footsteps, because all my friends were hanging over the balcony listening to all this that was going on. So it was pretty cool. And on the way back from the elementary school, I passed the truck, and as my quarterback was in the back, he was screaming. He goes, I got drafted by the Browns in the 11th round. And I said, well, I'm going to sign as a free agent. Little did I know I was going to end up being drafted. And I think the reason I said earlier is that because they thought I was going to go to Seattle, they took their second pick and drafted me. It was a great feeling. All the Grand Rapids TV stations came up with my friend and I, and it was pretty surreal. And then, you get on the phone, and it's Monty Clark, and he's telling you about coming up the next day get up for mini camp. And I'm in the lobby of a hotel. I'm meeting Jimmy Williams from Nebraska, Martin Moss from UCLA, and Rosie Barnes from Purdue. And they said, where are you from? I said, Grand Valley. I go, where's Grand Valley? Because back then, Grand Valley wasn't on the map. Now it is. I mean, you go to the NFL, there's enough guys that have been through the league that people know about Grand Valley. It was surreal. Now, I'm not going to lie. As a kid, I was a Packer fan. And the reason I was a Packer fan, it's not because I was close to Green Bay. We only had 3 TV stations. The only games you got for the NFL were Packer games. So I saw the Packers. That's what I saw on Sunday. We rarely got the Lions. So I didn't really know as much about them, but I hate the Packers now. I mean, I'm a diehard Honolulu Blue Silver guy now.
For your first 2 seasons of the league, 1982 and 1983, you were actually on playoff teams. Not many people know about those playoff teams in the 80s there, led by defensive tackle Doug English, quarterback Eric Hipple, all those players. So what went behind those 2 playoff appearances with Monty Clark as head coach?
Here's the deal, especially in the second year when we lost to the 49ers. We'd been in the championship game, and we missed a late field goal. Eddie missed it, but Eddie also made a nice kick right before the half. And we came back, we had a chance to win it and end the game with a kick. We'd have been in the championship game, won from the Super Bowl. We were solid, but we had Billy Sims. And, Barry Sanders, to me, you'll never find a running back as entertaining, makes spectacular plays, and probably the most enjoyable running back ever to watch in my lifetime. But I wouldn't trade the guy we had. And the reason was, Noah, Billy could run between the tackles. He could run the edge. He was a great receiver out of the backfield, and he would stone a blitz. He would step up and take on the backers. He was a complete running back, and he kept drives alive. Barry had a chance to go 80 yards on any given play. Ultimately, you need guys that keep drives alive, and that's what Billy was. Billy was a tremendous running back. He was a Heisman Trophy winner at Oklahoma, and then he blew his knee out. And we were snake bit because we were so close in 80. It was actually 83, 84. And when Billy blew his knee out the next season, we had James Jones, who was a fullback from Florida, a tremendous player as well, but he had to become a tailback because we didn't really have anyone to replace Billy. And then we started losing some guys, and we just went into a slide from there. But yeah, I thought my first couple of years, this is great. Everyone makes the playoffs every year. Well, that's not true. And we proved that over my next 5 seasons with the Lions.
So your last year in the league, 1988, that's when Mouse Davis came in as the offensive coordinator. And, I mentioned to you before we had him on just a couple months ago. Talk about that process, because then of course you were the tight end and they were running the run and shoot, so a different style of offense. So how did you deal with that?
Well, actually, it's an interesting story as well. As Mouse came in spring of '89, because I don't think Mouse was there. I don't think Mouse was there my last year. I just went with a mini camp. So when they hired Mouse and June Jones come in with Wayne hired Wayne Fonz, who I played for in '88. He went to the run and shoot. And the problem with the run and shoot, and I'm sitting in the meeting, Chuck Long, quarterback, and I'm sitting by Chuck, and Mouse is introducing the offense. He's showing you how the offense is operated in the positions and stuff. And I look at Chuck, I said, Chuck, they don't have any tight ends in this offense. He says, I know, because he already been in some previous meetings with Mouse. So right then I went up to the Wayne Fonz's hotel room. I said, Coach, what do you want, Rube? I said, you got to cut me. Let me go. I said, what are you talking about? You're my best tight end. I said, yeah, that's good, Coach, but you don't use them. He didn't even really know yet that there were no tight ends in this offense. He just knew about Mose's offense. And 2 weeks later, I was released because they released all the tight ends. They actually, for the only time in the history of the NFL, the team went through the entire season never having a tight end on the roster. But it was a blessing. No, I'm not going to lie. Physically, I'm 60 years old now. I'm in pretty good shape, but I got 2 fake knees. I had shoulder surgeries. I've had 13 surgeries. And I was not a big man. I played at 250, 255 my last couple, 3 years. That was a lot of weight for my body, and it takes its toll on me. And if I would have continued to play, and I had a chance, I mean, Atlanta, New Orleans, offered me to come into camp. I had enough. 7 years, your first couple of years in the NFL, it's so cool. By your fifth or sixth year, it's not much different than anyone else. You go to work every day. It's a job. I still enjoyed the games. I enjoyed the people, but it becomes a job, and your body, it's hard. It's really tough on the body.
After your career, you got into broadcasting. Now, like I mentioned before, today you're doing Eastern Michigan football. You're on Fox Sports Detroit. You're a lot of different places.
I'm everywhere. Yeah, I'm everywhere but nowhere. Right.
So how did you get involved with broadcasting?
When I played 82 and 87, we went on 2 NFL strikes, player strikes. So we had work stoppages. And in 87, when we were on strike, I went up to Grand Valley to watch games back to, because I still knew some people up that way. John Matlack was a sportsman out of Lansing or Grand Rapids at the time. He had me come on during halftime to do what we're doing right here. And after halftime, he goes, Rob, you have a natural gift to speak. You just very comfortable speaking. I said, yeah, I'm going to be a school teacher, and it kind of comes with the territory. He said, would you be interested in Grand Valley makes the playoff next week? Local ABC out of Grand Rapids was going to televise our game. He said, would you want to do TV with me? I said, okay. Well, you're in the NFL, Noah. People want to hear you talk. And the thing about communicating and speaking in front of people is you always tell yourself as a speaker, they want to hear what I have to say. And that's what you tell yourself, and that makes it easy. So I did a game with John, and then I ended up playing another year, and I retired. So then like 89 or 90, the Grand Valley made the playoffs. They called me up again and said, hey, Rob, you did a nice job. You want to do these games. So I did about 3 or 4 ABC games in Grand Rapids, and I worked with John. And I think Rick Berkey I worked with maybe possibly as well. Well, then PASS, Pro-Am Sports, was doing the Michigan High School football finals. In 92, they called me and said, would you be interested in broadcasting a few of the finals games for PASS, Pro-Am Sports? I said, sure. So I called a couple games in 92, and then I did them for probably 3 or 4 years, or maybe 3 years for PASS. Then Fox Sports Detroit came into play. They bought out PASS. And then they just looked at my work, continued to have me do different high school games. And then about 99 or 2000, they expanded my role, and I started doing sort of a show called Detroit Sports Report. And I'd go on and break down the Lions games and do a little bit every Sunday night for the Lions. And then they had me going out and doing some interviews, and the coaches were hired and fired in Lions history. There's a lot of that going on. So, and they kind of expanded my role. I've been doing the high school finals since 92, so this 28 in high school, if they haven't, hopefully not going to. So that's how I got into that. And then as far as Eastern's concerned, I was doing Grand Valley Radio at the time, 95 to 99, and Matt Shepard, now the voice of Tigers on television, and my Eastern Michigan partner, 20 years, he called me up. We had done a couple high school games together for Fox. He said, hey, Rob, this is Matt Shepard. Eastern hired me to do their play-by-play. I'm looking for an analyst. Would you be interested in doing it? And it was a little bit, I had good system at Grand Valley. They won all the time. They were a great program. They treated me great. Well, financially it was a lot better. Travel was closer. And I was going to get to go to some big-time stadiums and cover Division I football. So I said, yeah. So I did that since 99. And it's the most enjoyable thing I do is Eastern Michigan Radio. Now, they've had their struggles, but Chris Creighton's done a really nice job in the past half dozen years where they've been really competitive. It's more enjoyable, and the people at EMU are great to Shep and I, and they take great care of us. And, it's so many things. You get into business knowing so many things can stem off one job. You get your work out there. Because then eventually I was doing radio for WWJ and doing some pregame and postgame shows, and then I was doing pre and post for Fox. And then I had a chance to do the Lions preseason for, I think, 4 or 5 years. I did the preseason on television until they hired Chris Spielman. They were looking for a bigger name, and he was. I mean, it's not full of Rob Rubick, Chris Spielman. It's not the same. It's not equitable. Now, is my work as good as his? I believe so. I think it's every bit as good as his. But there's branding. In the business, there's branding. You've had Corey Schlesinger. You've had Lomas Brown on your show. I'm not either of them. But as far as doing this, I would stack my work with anyone. That's not always, it's kind of like a player when you're playing. They drafted David Lewis, a first-round tight end of my 3rd year when I was started. I was better than him, and I knew I was better than him. And our quarterback, Gary Danielson, knew I was better than him. But it didn't matter. They were paying him a lot more money, and they had to give him every opportunity to succeed, which they did. But ultimately, toward the end of the season, they started playing me. And don't get me wrong, I was average. My best years, I was an average NFL type. Your job's easy when you have me, isn't it? If you have Schlesinger on here, you have Slay, man, you got to do a lot of talking. That boy he's a man of few words.
So you mentioned, obviously, you and Matt Shepard have been doing Eastern Michigan football for a long time, and the MAC got a little bit of a late start this year compared to other conferences. 4 games played already, 2 games left. Eastern Michigan not really having a good year, 0-4, not the year that they expected, but big game against Western Michigan this Saturday. Anything could turn around. How does the MAC shake out as well?
Well, Noah, here's the thing about Eastern Michigan. The problem is we just don't have a lot of Jimmies and Joes. Our coaches are great with the X's and O's, but sooner or later you got to have some playmakers. We just don't have a lot right now. We're coached so well. I think they prepare our kids so well. Every week we're 0-4. We are leading 3 of the games in the fourth quarter that we lost. We were beating Kent State. We had a chance to win down there. We got a tough call against Ball State where an official ran into one of our coaches on the sideline, which allowed them to get the winning drive, or else we had to punt the ball. And we were ahead of Central. I mean, we were handling Central pretty well. In the fourth quarter, we turned the ball over 3 plays out of 5 in the end. We self-destructed. There's such a room, Eastern right now with the talent pool that Coach Creighton has, there's so little room for error. You have to be not perfect, but pretty close. And when you have turnovers from the game and the other team has more playmaker, it's tough. But the pleasure of doing Eastern is not only Chris Creighton and his staff are just tremendous coaches, they're tremendous people. They're really, truly good men. The university treats us well. WEMU treats us great. And they're competitive now. And I did it for 15 years where we'd win 2 games in a year. Well, Shep was so prepared because a lot of the games were 40-0 at half. We go to Florida or LSU where we're just getting destroyed. And now, we've beaten, 4 years ago we beat Rutgers. 3 years ago we beat Purdue. 2 years ago we beat Illinois. We've gone down to LSU and competed when they had Fournette. We lost maybe 27-7. We had Kentucky beat in Kentucky. We got a horrible call on a pass interference call that gave them the win. And we've closed the gap on the Power Fives. We've closed the gap even on the lower level Big Ten teams. The MAC has. I'm not talking about Eastern, the entire Mid-American Conference. Now, you're asking about this season in the MAC. I really like Toledo going into last week, and then Ball State beat. And we had Ball State beat. Now, it's hard. It's all about matchups. However you match up against a team, is because Toledo, we didn't match up well against. They handled us. We had Ball State beat, and we lost. Ball State beat Toledo. So they just matched up better. This weekend against Western, it'll be tough because of Eskridge, the way he can run. And we're not that fast in the back end. But we'll play soft coverage. We'll play off coverage. We'll keep it in front of us. And I think we can move the ball. Our quarterback, Preston Hutchinson's done a really nice job this year. He's more than a game manager. He'll throw guys open. He can run a little bit, and he's done a nice job with Chris's offense. So I think we'll be competitive. I know the spread's 13, and Western beat Central, who beat us. But it's, like I said, how do we match up? We'll see. Well, in the big picture, though, I think Buffalo is the cream right now. I think Buffalo, because their defense is, average to maybe a little above average. Toledo's is too, but Buffalo's offense with the Patterson kid, they run zone, and they have big offensive linemen. They work so well together. They create a little bit of crease, and boom, he's gone. I think Buffalo's a team to beat.
So you are the voice of high school football here in the state of Michigan as well, doing the state finals for many, many years. Matt Shepard, also your partner with that. So obviously, a wrench was thrown into the high school season when the quarterfinals happened, and then all of a sudden they said we can't play anymore. But it looks like they're going to reschedule and play them, mid to late December. So it's basically like a whole brand new season, it seems like.
It is. And they didn't allow they don't allow them to practice or do anything. So it's going to be interesting. Some of these teams that are really starting to gel and flow and play well, like a Davison, like Jake Weingarts, they were really playing as well as anyone. How do they respond to that? How about the kid, like his quarterback who's going to Northwestern, who's going as an early entry in January, and all of a sudden you're playing him 2 weeks before he goes. But it's all going to depend on what the governor says probably on Sunday night or Monday, because if she extends the out-of-school order, the stay-home order for virtual, where I can't believe that you're going to be able to play these games, that they might just cancel the season, which would be a shame. I mean, can you imagine, Noah, if it was your high school team and you're 2 games from Ford Field, and you've already won three rounds in the playoff, and now it's done. So it'd be devastating. I can't even comprehend how these young men feel. So let's hope. Keep your fingers crossed that they play them, because it is a joy, and it's a great weekend. And I always tell people, if you have a son, your dad, I don't care if you're home, your daughter, son or daughter, and you want to get down to Ford Field, it's reasonably priced. You can get there. The parking's easy. You can look at this great venue, and you can sit close and watch football all day, in high school football with the pageantry of the towns coming out and the cheerleaders and the band. And it's just a really great event.
Final question for you, Rob. We're going to switch gears a little bit more to the Detroit Lions, your former team. And, you were the voice of the Lions preseason football for a little bit as well. Obviously, a lot of changes happening. Matt Patricia fired, Bob Quinn fired, Darrell Bevell, the interim head coach. How do you see this team finishing out the season, and then in the offseason picking the general manager and then the head coach?
Well, I went through 3 coaches. I got a lot of them fired. I always tell people it was my fault. But when Wayne took over my last year, he was interim for the last probably 6 or 7 games. And he wanted the job, Wayne Fonstead. And he told us as players, he said, this isn't play this run out, just end the season and get out of here. He says, I want this job. You're going to play hard, and if you do that, then I'm going to reward you. So in other words, he was not bribing the team, but he's just saying, listen, I want to be your head coach. Let's see what we can do together in these last 6 or 7 games. And I don't know about Darrell Bevell's aspirations, if he's thinking, yeah, I want to be the head coach or not. If he does, he has a meeting like Wayne did with us. I mean, we played hard. And I think we were 3-2 on the way out, or 4-2 or something after they fired Wayne, and he ended up keeping the job and had it for quite a few years. Is Darrell Bevell saying that to his club? I don't know. Did Patricia and Quinn being fired? Had to be done. Did it have to be done now? No, not necessarily. But you can't. NFL is, what are you doing for me now? There's no more rebuilding for 3 or 4 years. Ever since free agency came in, Noah, you can change the makeup of your team quickly. You can fill needs through free agency. You can fill needs through the draft. But you have to be smart with your money. People don't understand. I mean, for years they say, oh, the Fords are cheap. What do you mean the Fords are cheap? Everyone has the same money they have to spend. See, people hear the salary cap, they say, you can't spend over that. What you can. But there's also a bottom of it. And I don't even know what it is. Let's say it was $200 million. Well, you have to spend $192 million. If that's what it's not like you can come out and spend $60 million like baseball, be a small market. No, you have to spend that. The players union, that's one of the best things they did. They want you spending that money. They don't want, you have to spend it. So the Fords aren't cheap at all. They're spending exactly what everyone else is spending. It's how you spend your money. And that's where your player personnel comes into play. We had a guy named Kevin Colbert here for years, who's with Pittsburgh now. He's done tremendous things. And you need to find good people as a general manager, as player personnel, and as a head coach. How do they do that? I really wish the Fords would put together a committee. I've talked to some other people in the media. Put together a hiring committee. Get 3 or 4 guys that you trust. Bring Jim Caldwell and say, Coach Caldwell, come back. Would you help us make this? Hire a coach, hire a GM. Get Gary Danielson, who does SEC football for CBS. Gary's one of the smartest football people I know. He's in touch with the college game. Get Chris Spielman. Get Rob Rubick and Lomas Brown. Bring in some former players. Get a group of about 5 people to help you do this search. Because, you look at the president, Rod Wood, great business guy, financial guy. He's not a footballer. His roots are not in football. Have someone come in, a committee that can help you. And, the 4 daughter, she took over the team now.
Sheila. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Sheila. She's not, she's watched football, probably loves football, but this isn't what she has been in her DNA. So bring a committee and bring a group of counsel to help you do the search. Bring them in for a couple of weeks. Help us do this. Put a good system in place from the top down, from the GM to the coaches and so forth. And then you have a chance with the players. The players right now, I just feel the Lions have 2 hands tied behind their back.
Rob Rubick, former tight end for the Lions in the 80s, also broadcasts Eastern Michigan football, high school football on Fox Sports Detroit, among other things as well. You can follow him on Twitter at rrubick, RRUBICK on Twitter. Rob, thanks again for joining us.
Hey, no, that's good. I don't go on that Twitter much anymore. I got enough technology I'm trying to learn. So, yeah, I appreciate it and you do a nice job.
Want to thank Rob Rubick again for coming on to Open Mic Night. A lot of fun talking Lions football with him and a lot of the other things he does. Really interesting story, especially of how he learned he got drafted by the Lions playing at the playground. Always interesting to hear because there's very few players in NFL history that have come from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So it's always interesting to hear a different perspective, if you will, and Rob Rubick did an excellent job with that, that's for sure. Make sure to listen to the other content on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, the Fan Report, the Michigan Football Podcast. We got the famous Doc and Jock podcast as well as the Wrestling Podcast. It's a lot of great content, and there's much, much more. Just check it out on their website and on Twitter. Lions hoping to get back into that win column against Green Bay. It's going to be some tough sledding. We'll see how that turns out. Also, Michigan State basketball 5-0. They got a big matchup against Virginia on Wednesday. When the time comes, we're definitely going to be talking a lot more Michigan State basketball because I'm a big college basketball fan, and I would love to just dive deeper into that. Pistons starting up soon as well. And the game on Saturday, Michigan-Ohio State. Oof, I don't know how that's going to go for Michigan. It seems like they're going to have a lot of tough sledding in what could be perhaps Jim Harbaugh's final Ohio State-Michigan game as the head coach of the Maize and Blue. But thanks for joining us, folks. Make sure to tune in next week only on Open Mic Night.